William Turner came home early that afternoon and heard something that stopped his heart. A sound, coming from upstairs. A sound he hadn't heard in 11 months. A sound he thought was gone forever. His chest tightened. His hands started shaking. He dropped everything and ran. When he opened the nursery door, what he saw made him freeze. William had left work early that day. No reason. Just couldn't focus. The house was quiet when he walked in, like always. But then he heard it, faint at first, coming from upstairs. A sound. His chest tightened. He couldn't place it at first, but something about it made his heart pound, made his breath catch. It was familiar, but impossible. Alex and Alan were 2 years old now. They should have been running around, talking non-stop, asking questions about everything. Instead, they'd been silent for 11 months, ever since Emma died. The doctors said it would never come back, said the trauma was too deep, permanent. William had finally accepted it, stopped trying, buried himself in work to avoid the crushing weight of that word. But now, standing in his own house, hearing this sound drifting down from the nursery, his hands started shaking. He dropped his briefcase right there and ran up the stairs, heart pounding, barely breathing. When he reached the nursery door, he pushed it open, and what he saw made him freeze. His sons, his silent, broken 2-year-old boys, were running across the carpet, arms stretched wide, faces lit up with pure joy. Laughing, they were running to her. Mary Morrison, the housekeeper he'd hired 6 weeks ago, and then William heard something that shattered everything he thought he knew. Small, wobbly, but unmistakable. "Mama May," his son's voice, for the first time ever. Before we begin, hit subscribe, drop a like, and tell me where in the world you're watching from, because sometimes God works miracles through the most unexpected people, and maybe you're watching this today because you need to believe that again. William stood in that doorway, unable to move, unable to breathe. His sons were talking. Mary looked up and saw him standing there. Her smile faded slightly, like she'd been caught doing something wrong, but the boys didn't notice him at all. They were too focused on her, on the game she was playing, on the way she clapped her hands and made silly faces that sent them into fits of giggles. Alan stumbled and fell onto his bottom, and instead of crying, he laughed even harder. Alex reached for Mary's hands, pulling himself up, babbling sounds that almost resembled words. William's throat burned. This was what 2-year-olds were supposed to sound like. This energy, this joy, this life. He hadn't seen it in so long he'd forgotten it existed. The last time his boys made noise was the morning Emma collapsed in the kitchen. She'd been making breakfast pancakes, the boy's favorite, when she grabbed the counter, said his name once, and dropped, just like that. Gone before the ambulance even arrived. Massive brain aneurysm. The doctor said she never felt pain, that it happened too fast. But the boys saw it. They were in their high chairs, 14 months old, watching their mother fall and not get back up, and from that day forward, they stopped making sounds. No crying, no babbling, nothing. William took them to every specialist in the state, spent a fortune on tests, therapies, interventions. One doctor after another said the same thing. The trauma occurred during a critical language development window. Without intervention in the next few months, the damage may be irreversible. He'd tried everything. Speech therapy 3 times a week, occupational therapy, play therapy, medication trials. The boys sat through it all like empty shells, staring at nothing, refusing to engage. Eventually, the doctors stopped using words like recovery and started using words like management. William had given up, accepted that his sons would grow up silent. That grief had stolen more than just their mother. It had stolen their voices too. But now, watching them laugh and reach for Mary, hearing them say her name with voices that shouldn't exist, he didn't know what to feel. Relief that they could speak, jealousy that it wasn't him they were speaking to, shame that a woman he barely knew had done what he couldn't. Mary finally stood, wiping her hands on her jeans, and walked over to him. "Mr. Turner," she said softly, "I didn't know you'd be home early." William opened his mouth, but nothing came out. She glanced back at the boys, then looked at him with something in her eyes he couldn't read. "They've been making sounds for about a week now," she said quietly. "I didn't want to say anything until I was sure." A week. His sons had been finding their voices for a week, and he hadn't even noticed. Mary started to walk past him toward the stairs, but William's voice finally came back. Wait. She stopped. He stared at her, then at his boys, then back at her. And the question that came out of his mouth surprised even him. What did you do to my children? Mary turned slowly, her eyes meeting his. She didn't look afraid. Didn't look defensive. Just steady. I gave them attention, Mr. Turner. William's jaw tightened. Attention? I pay for pediatric neurologists, speech therapists, trauma specialists. I know, Mary said quietly. And they all wanted to fix what they thought was broken. She glanced back at the boys, who were now stacking blocks on the carpet, still making soft sounds to each other. But your sons aren't broken, she continued. They're just scared, and they needed someone to show them it's safe to make noise again. William felt something twist in his chest. He wanted to argue, wanted to defend himself, wanted to say he'd done everything humanly possible to help his children, but the words stuck in his throat, because standing here, watching his sons play peacefully with this woman, hearing sounds he thought were gone forever, he couldn't deny what was right in front of him. Mary took a small step closer, her voice gentle but firm. They said mama to me because I look at them, I sing to them. I sit on the floor and let them come to me when they're ready. I'm just present. That word hit him like a punch. Present. It's not about money or therapy schedules, Mary said softly. It's about being truly here. William's hands clenched into fists at his sides. You have no idea what I've been through, he said, his voice harder than he meant it to be. Mary's expression softened. You're right. I don't know your grief, Mr. Turner, but I know theirs. And right now, they need someone who can hold them without falling apart. The truth of it landed in William's chest like a stone. He wanted to fire her on the spot, wanted to tell her she was overstepping, crossing lines, making assumptions about his life. But he couldn't, because she was right. He had fallen apart. He'd buried himself in work, turned this house into a tomb, avoided his own children because looking at them reminded him too much of Emma. And while he was drowning in his own pain, his sons had been drowning too. Mary watched him for a moment, then spoke again, quieter this time. I'm not trying to replace anyone. I'm just trying to love them while you figure out how to come back. William opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Mary gave him a small, sad smile, then walked past him toward the stairs. He stood there, frozen, listening to her footsteps fade down the hallway. Behind him, Alex laughed softly. William turned and looked at his sons. They were playing, making sounds, alive in a way he hadn't seen in almost a year, and they hadn't even looked at him once. That night, William sat in his office with the door locked, staring at the security camera footage from the past 6 weeks, watching Mary with his children, and what he saw made his hands shake. William sat in the dark of his office, laptop glowing in front of him, watching. He'd gone back 6 weeks, to the day Mary started. The footage was silent, but he didn't need sound to see what was happening. Week 1. Mary walked into the living room where the boys sat on the floor, staring at nothing. She didn't try to engage them, didn't force interaction. She just sat down a few feet away and started folding laundry. And she hummed, softly, almost under her breath. William had wanted to fire her for that, thought it was unprofessional. But he watched Alex's head turn slightly toward the sound. Just a tiny movement, but it was something. Week 2. Mary opened a curtain in the kitchen. Let sunlight pour across the table. William remembered being annoyed when he saw that. He'd closed those curtains for a reason, but in the footage, he watched Alan toddle over to the window, press his small hand against the glass, and stare at the light like he was seeing it for the first time. Week 3. Mary sat on the floor with the boys while they played with blocks. She talked to them, narrated everything she did. Miss Mary's going to put this blue block here. Oh, look at that tower you're building, Alex. That's beautiful. The boys didn't respond, didn't even look at her, but they stayed close. Week 4. William watched Mary sing while washing dishes. A simple song, something about sunshine and rain. And in the background, barely visible, Alex swayed slightly to the rhythm. William's throat tightened. Week 5. Mary was reading a picture book out loud, showing the boys the pages even though they seemed uninterested. But then Alan reached out and touched the page, just once, then pulled his hand back. Mary smiled like he'd given her the world. Week 6. The boys started following her around the house, not talking, not engaging, just staying close, like they felt safer when she was near. William closed the laptop and sat in the darkness, his chest aching. She hadn't done anything extraordinary. No special techniques, no expensive interventions. She'd just been there, patient, present, steady, everything he hadn't been. The next morning, William woke up early and went downstairs before she arrived. But when he walked into the kitchen, Mary was already there. She was preparing breakfast, and the boys were in their high chairs, making soft, babbling sounds. Not words yet, just sounds, small experiments with their voices. Mary was talking to them like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Miss Mary's cutting strawberries. See? Red and sweet. Your mama used to love strawberries." William stopped in the doorway. She talked about Emma, to his children, like it wasn't forbidden, like Emma's memory was something safe to touch. "What are you doing?" His voice came out rougher than he intended. Mary turned, calm as ever. "Making breakfast." "You talked to them about their mother?" "Yes. I didn't give you permission to do that." Mary set down the knife and looked at him directly. "Mr. Turner, with all respect, they need to know she existed, that she loved them, that it's okay to remember her." William's hands clenched. "You don't get to decide that." "Then who does?" Mary's voice was still gentle, but there was steel underneath. "Because right now, this house pretends she never lived here, and those boys can feel it. You don't know what you're talking about." "I know what grief looks like when it's eating someone alive," Mary said quietly, "and I know what it looks like when children are drowning, because the adults around them are too broken to throw them a line." William felt like he'd been slapped. "You need to stay in your lane," he said, voice shaking. "You're the housekeeper. That's it." Mary held his gaze. "Is that what you tell yourself, so you don't have to face the truth?" "What truth?" "That your sons are healing, and you're not." The words hung in the air like smoke. William's vision blurred. He wanted to scream at her, fire her, throw her out of his house, but his voice came out as barely a whisper. "Get out." Mary didn't move. "Mr. Turner." "I said get out." She looked at the boys, then back at him, and something in her expression broke his heart. "If that's what you want." She walked past him without another word, and as William stood there, chest heaving, fists clenched, the boys went completely silent. Mary didn't fight him. She packed her things quietly while the boys were in the living room, and by the time William came back downstairs an hour later, she was gone. Just like that. The house felt different immediately, heavier, like all the air had been sucked out. William stood in the kitchen, staring at the strawberries she'd been cutting, still sitting on the counter. He didn't know what to do with them. That evening, he tried to feed the boys dinner. They sat in their high chairs, staring at their plates, not eating, not making sounds, not moving. "Come on, guys," William said, his voice too loud in the quiet. "You love mac and cheese." Nothing. He tried again the next morning, made their favorite breakfast, put on a cartoon, sat on the floor next to them like Mary had done, but they just stared past him, like he wasn't even there. By the third day, William was unraveling. The boys wouldn't eat unless he forced them, wouldn't sleep through the night, just cried silently, tears streaming down their faces without a sound. It was worse than before, because now he knew what they'd lost. He'd given them hope, let them taste what it felt like to be safe again, and then he'd ripped it away. On the fourth night, William sat on the floor outside their bedroom, listening to them cry. He'd tried everything, rocking them, reading to them, playing Emma's favorite songs. Nothing worked. They didn't want him. They wanted her. William pulled out his phone and stared at Mary's number. His thumb hovered over the call button. But what would he even say? "I'm sorry I fired you for caring about my children. I'm sorry I couldn't handle the truth." He put the phone down and pressed his palms against his eyes. Emma's voice echoed in his memory. Something she'd said once, years ago, when he was stressed about work. "You can't control everything, Will. Sometimes you just have to trust that things will work out." But he hadn't trusted anything since the day she died, and now his children were paying the price. The next morning, William found something on the kitchen counter. A small notebook, blue fabric cover with Emma's name embroidered on it. He picked it up with shaking hands. It was Emma's handwriting inside. Page after page of notes about the boys. "When Alex is sad, rub his back in circles. Alan loves being held while you hum. Their favorite song is the one I made up about stars and dreams." At the bottom of the first page, in different handwriting, Mary's was a note. "I found this in their closet. Thought you should have it." She knew exactly what they needed. William's vision blurred. Mary had found this, had read it, had used it to help his sons, and he'd thrown her out for it. He flipped through the pages, heart breaking with every word Emma had written, and then he reached the last page. A letter, addressed to him. "Will, if you're reading this, I'm gone." His hands started shaking so hard, he almost dropped it. William sat on the kitchen floor, Emma's notebook open in his lap, and read, "Will, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I know you, baby. You'll work harder, control more. Try to manage everything so nothing else breaks. But please don't let silence take over our home." His throat closed up. "Sing to our boys. Hold them. Let them see you cry. Let them know that grief and love can exist in the same space. Don't be so afraid of the pain that you forget to feel the love." William's chest cracked open. "I'll always be in the songs, in the laughter, in the love you give them. Come back to them, Will. Come back to yourself. Be brave enough to let people in. I love you forever. Emma." The sob came from somewhere so deep inside him, he didn't know it existed. He doubled over, Emma's words blurring in front of him, and wept. Really wept. For the first time since her funeral. For Emma. For his boys. For the year he'd wasted trying to control what only needed to be felt. He'd been so terrified of breaking that he'd locked everything down the house. His heart, his children, and in doing that, he'd lost them anyway. Upstairs, he heard one of the boys crying. William wiped his face and stood on shaking legs. He walked to the nursery and found Alex sitting up in his crib, tears streaming down his face, silent. William reached in and picked him up. Alex stiffened at first, unsure, but William held him close, rocked him gently, and did something he hadn't done in 11 months. He sang Emma's made-up lullaby, the one she used to sing every night. "Twinkle stars above, Mama's little love, dreams are floating high, underneath the sky." His voice cracked. The words came out rough and broken, but he kept singing, and slowly, so slowly, Alex's body relaxed against his chest. William felt his son's small hand grip his shirt, felt the weight of him settle in, and for the first time in almost a year, Alex let his father hold him. Alan woke up too, reaching through the crib bars. William sat on the floor between both cribs, one son in his arms, singing softly, tears still running down his face. This was what Emma had been trying to tell him. It wasn't about being strong. It wasn't about having all the answers. It was about showing up, being present, letting them see that he was broken too and that it was okay. When the boys finally fell back asleep, William carried them to their cribs and covered them gently. Then he walked downstairs, picked up his phone, and stared at Mary's number. It was 5:30 inches the morning. He didn't care. He grabbed his keys, walked out to his car, and drove. 20 minutes later, he pulled up outside a small apartment building on the edge of town. He sat there for a moment, engine idling, trying to figure out what to say. Then he saw her. Mary was sitting on the front steps with a cup of coffee, watching the sunrise, like she'd been waiting. William cut the engine, got out, and walked toward her. She looked up as he approached, her face unreadable. He stopped a few feet away, hands shaking, voice breaking. "I was so terrified of losing them," he said, "that I forgot I'd already lost them." Mary didn't say anything, just watched him. "You didn't take anything from me, Mary," William continued, his voice cracking. "You gave me back my sons." He took a breath. "Please come home." Mary set down her coffee and stood slowly. She looked at him for a long moment, and what she said next would change everything. Mary looked at him with eyes that had seen too much loss to play games. "I'll come back, Mr. Turner," she said quietly, "but only if you come back too." William's breath caught. "What do you mean?" "I mean I can't do this alone," Mary said, her voice steady but firm. "Those boys don't just need me. They need their father." She took a step closer. "Not the version of you who hides in his office and watches them through cameras. The real you. The one who sits on the floor. The one who isn't afraid to feel." William nodded, throat tight. "I know. I'm trying. I believe you," Mary interrupted gently. "But you have to understand something. This isn't about hiring me back. It's about you deciding to show up for them every single day, even when it hurts." "I will," William said. "I promise." Mary studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Okay." That afternoon, Mary walked back through the front door. The boys were in the living room with William, playing quietly or trying to. The moment they saw her, their faces lit up. "Mama May!" Alan shouted, scrambling to his feet. Alex ran straight to her, arms outstretched. Mary knelt down and caught them both, holding them tight, her eyes closing with relief. William stood back, watching, and felt something shift in his chest. Not jealousy this time, gratitude. Over the next few weeks, William started waking up earlier. He'd come downstairs before work and sit on the floor with the boys, read to them, play with blocks, make silly faces that made them giggle. It was clumsy at first. He didn't know how to do it. But Mary was patient. She showed him. Let them come to you. Don't force it. Just be there. And slowly, so slowly, the boys started letting him in. Alex touched his face one morning during breakfast. Alan climbed into his lap during story time. Small moments. But they mattered. One evening, William came home and found Mary in the backyard with the boys. The grass had been maintained by landscapers, but no one had actually used the yard since Emma died. Mary had taken off the boys' shoes. "Let's feel the earth," she said softly. Alex touched the grass and giggled. Alan found a ladybug and pointed, eyes wide with wonder. William watched from the window, his phone recording everything, tears streaming down his face. That night, he found a note on the fridge in Mary's handwriting. Today they touched the world. William sat at the kitchen table and cried. But this time, it wasn't from grief. It was from hope. 3 days later, William was in his office when his phone buzzed. A text from Mary. "Can you come to the nursery? There's something you need to see." His heart started pounding. He took the stairs 2 at a time. When he reached the doorway, Mary was sitting on the floor with the boys, holding something in her hands. A small phone. Rose gold case. Emma's phone. William froze. "Where did you find that?" Mary looked up at him, her expression gentle but serious. "In your bedroom closet, behind some boxes." She held it up. "There are voice recordings on here, Mr. Turner. Dozens of them. Messages Emma left for the boys." William's knees almost gave out. "I think they need to hear their mother's voice." William couldn't speak. He just stared at that phone in Mary's hands like it was something holy. "How?" His voice broke. "How is it still charged?" Mary shook her head. "I don't know, but it is." She held it out to him. William's hands shook as he took it. The screen lit up when he pressed the button. No password. Emma always said life was too short for locked phones. He opened the voice memos app. 47 recordings. Titles like "For My Boys," "Bedtime Song," "When They're Scared," "First Day of School." William's vision blurred. "I didn't listen to them," Mary said softly. "That felt private. But I think the boys should hear her voice." William looked at his sons, sitting on the carpet, watching him with wide eyes. They didn't understand. They were too young. But something in him knew Mary was right. He sat down on the floor, the boys between him and Mary. His finger hovered over the first recording. Then he pressed play. Emma's voice filled the quiet room. Warm. Alive. Her. "Alex and Alan, this is Mommy. I'm recording this while you're still growing inside me. And I already love you more than anything in the world." William's chest caved in. He hadn't heard her voice in 11 months, hadn't let himself listen to old voicemails, watch old videos. It hurt too much. But now, hearing her speak to their sons, it was like she was in the room with them. The boys went completely still. Alex's head tilted, like he was trying to remember something he'd forgotten. Alan's little face scrunched up, confused. William played another one. "Twinkle stars above, Mama's little loves, dreams are floating high, underneath the sky." Emma's lullaby. The one she'd made up, the one William had sung just days ago. But hearing it in her voice, perfect, tender, hers broke something open inside him. Alan started to hum, softly, off-key, but it was the melody. Alex watched his brother, then tried to hum too. Mary's hand covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. William played recording after recording. Emma reading stories, making silly voices, leaving messages for when the boys got older. "When you're scared, remember Mommy's always with you. In the wind, in the stars, in every good thing that happens." By the time William stopped, the boys were leaning against him. Not just near him, against him, trusting him to hold them. That night, after the boys fell asleep, William sat in the kitchen with Mary. She made tea, set a cup in front of him, "Thank you," he said quietly, "for finding that." Mary nodded. She left them pieces of herself. "I just thought they deserved to have them." William looked down at the phone in his hands. "I was so afraid," he whispered. "Afraid that if I let myself remember her, I'd fall apart. That if I let the boys remember her, it would hurt them more." Mary reached across the table and touched his hand. "Memory doesn't hurt them, Mr. Turner. Pretending she never existed does." William closed his eyes. "I don't know how to do this," he said, voice breaking. "How to be their father without her." "You don't have to know," Mary said gently. "You just have to try." She pulled her hand back and stood. "I should go. It's late." But before she reached the door, William spoke again. "Mary, why do you care so much?" She stopped, turned back slowly, and the look on her face made William's heart stop. "Because I know what it's like to lose everything," she said, her voice trembling. "And I know what it's like when no one shows up to help you survive it." William stood. "What do you mean?" Mary's eyes filled with tears. "I had a daughter once." The words hung in the air like a prayer. "Her name was Mia." William's breath caught. You had a daughter?" Mary nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "She was 18 months old, drowned in a neighbor's pool while I was inside making lunch." She wiped her face with shaking hands. "I turned my back for 2 minutes. That's all it took." William felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. "Mary. After she died," Mary continued, voice barely above a whisper, "I couldn't speak for weeks, couldn't eat, couldn't function. Everyone around me wanted me to move forward, to find closure, to heal faster." She looked at him with eyes that held too much pain. "Only my grandmother just sat with me, held my hand, didn't try to fix me, just waited for me to come back." William understood now. "Everything. Your boys aren't broken, Mr. Turner," Mary said, her voice steady despite the tears. "They're doing exactly what they need to do to survive, and they'll come back when someone makes them feel safe enough." She took a breath. "I'm not trying to replace their mother. I'm just trying to love them the way I wish someone had been able to love my Mia longer." William crossed the kitchen and pulled her into a hug. She stiffened for a moment, then broke, sobbed into his shoulder like she'd been holding it in for years, and maybe she had. "I'm so sorry," William whispered. Mary cried harder. When she finally pulled back, her face was red, her eyes swollen, but something had shifted between them. Understanding, recognition. Two people who'd lost everything, trying to build something from the pieces. Over the next few months, the house transformed. William started coming home earlier, playing with the boys before dinner, reading bedtime stories. Mary opened more curtains, put music on in the kitchen, brought flowers inside. The boys started talking more. Not much, but enough. Dada, truck, hungry. Small words, but to William, they were everything. One Saturday morning, William came downstairs and found Mary at the kitchen table, staring at a letter. Her hands were shaking. "What's wrong?" he asked. She looked up, tears in her eyes. "It's a job offer," she said quietly. "Director of Early Childhood Trauma Recovery at Bright Horizons Pediatric Center." William's stomach dropped. "Triple my salary, full benefits, national recognition." She set the letter down. It's everything I've worked toward." William sat across from her, his heart pounding. He wanted to beg her to stay, wanted to tell her the boys needed her, that he needed her, but he couldn't trap her here. Not after everything she'd given them. "You should take it," he said, even though the words felt like broken glass. Mary looked at him, surprised. "Really?" William nodded, even though his chest was caving in. "You deserve it, Mary. You've saved us, but you can't give up your future to stay here." Mary stared at the letter, then at him. "Can I think about it?" Of course. That night, William couldn't sleep. He sat in his office, staring at nothing, imagining what life would be like without Mary. The boys would survive. They were talking now, healing. But the thought of her leaving felt like losing someone all over again. He was about to turn off the light when he heard a sound downstairs. Footsteps. He walked down and found Mary in the kitchen, making tea at 2 a.m. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked. William shook his head. They sat in silence for a moment. Then William reached into his desk drawer and pulled out an envelope. "Before you decide," he said quietly, "I want you to see something." He handed it to her. Mary opened it slowly. Inside was a contract, And something else, something that made her hands start shaking. Mary stared at the contract in her hands. Family Care Director, Turner Household. The salary matched Bright Horizons' offer. Full benefits, retirement plan, education fund. But it was the paper-clipped drawing that made her start crying. 4 stick figures, holding hands, labeled in crayon, Dada, Mama May, Ah, Ah, a rainbow above them, a heart below. William's voice was quiet. This isn't a job offer, Mary. It's family. You already are. This just makes it official. Mary looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. Mr. Turner. William, he said softly. Just William. Mary wiped her eyes, looked at the drawing again, then back at him, and she signed. 6 months later, William woke to the sound of small feet padding across the floor. His bedroom door creaked open. 2 little faces peeked around the frame. Alex and Alan climbed into his bed, something they hadn't done since before Emma died. They nestled against him, warm and trusting. Alex whispered, Dada, home. Alan added, Love, Dada. William's throat tightened. They handed him a card they'd made with Mary. Construction paper, finger paint, glitter everywhere. Inside were 3 photographs. Emma, labeled Mama in Heaven, with stars drawn around her. Mary, labeled Mama May here, with hearts. William, labeled Best Dada, in wobbly letters. At the bottom, OWRFMLI. William held his sons close and felt something he hadn't felt in almost 2 years. Peace. Downstairs, Mary was making pancakes, singing Emma's lullaby softly. The boys ran down ahead of William, shouting, Mama May! Mama May! Flour was everywhere. Orange juice spilled. Chaos and laughter filled the kitchen. William joined them, tried to flip a pancake, burned it completely. The boys giggled. Mary smiled at him, that quiet smile that meant we made it. Alan tugged on William's sleeve, his little face serious. Dada, Mama May stay forever? William looked at Mary, who was wiping Alex's face with a towel. She met his eyes. Forever sounds good to me, she said. Alex clapped. Forever, forever. Alan repeated it, laughing. And in that moment, William understood something Emma had tried to tell him all along. Love doesn't replace, it expands. Emma would always be their mother, the one who gave them life, who sang to them first, who loved them before they even existed. Mary was something equally sacred, the one who taught them it was safe to live again. Both could exist, both were necessary, both were loved. The sound of his sons' voices, once impossible, had become ordinary. Alex chattering about trucks, Alan singing off-key, arguments over who got the red block, and that ordinary miracle was everything. William looked at Emma's photo on the counter and whispered, Thank you, for loving him, for leaving him breadcrumbs to find his way back, for somehow, in ways he'd never understand, sending Mary when they needed her most. Mary squeezed his hand. No words needed. Outside, the sun poured through open curtains. Music played softly in the background, and the house that grief had turned into a tomb was finally, beautifully, alive. Because love isn't about perfection or control or having all the answers. It's about presence, showing up, sitting on the floor, holding hands even when it hurts. It's about being brave enough to let people in, to let yourself break, to let healing happen in its own time. And sometimes, just sometimes, God uses the most unexpected people to bring miracles into our lives, not to replace what was lost, but to remind us that love never really ends. It just finds new ways to grow. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment and tell us where you're watching from. Hit subscribe for more stories about love, loss, and the miracles hidden in everyday moments. And share this with someone who needs to remember healing is possible. Grace still finds us, and we're never as alone as we think.